Hey everybody, thanks for joining us here today. For those of you who saw my videos that I posted earlier, either earlier today or yesterday, depending on whenever you see this, I had said that I was going to be interviewing somebody who has been doing a lot of work out here in North Carolina. And this is him right here. His name's Tim Brown, and I had the pleasure of meeting him because he has actually been doing a tremendous amount of volunteer work and relief work for some of my best friends in the area here, John and Christica. They own a piece of land out here that is named Mosaic Mountain Village. Actually, I just now thought of this literally right now. Check out their website. I'm probably going to go ahead and post it in the link in the description below. So this gentleman has been at completely on his own dime, completely based off of his donations that he's been getting from some people, but then honestly a lot of just his own personal expenses had been coming out here in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, and doing an incredible amount of relief work. He's an amazing human being, and I feel very, very blessed to be able to call him a friend now. So Tim, thanks for coming on today.
You're welcome.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me and doing this video.
Absolutely.
Grateful to be here.
It's actually, it really is my honor.
Yeah.
Because Tim and I, we became, fun story that I'm actually going to share really quick before we get into your story is we have an airport here in Asheville that is only about maybe half hour away or something like that. But Tim's always been coming in because he's able to get, this is actually going to be part of his story about all the different ways that he's been getting blessings and receiving gifts from people. But he's been getting gifted flight after flight after flight through a friend of his, was it Southwest Airlines. And a friend of his is a pilot out there. Well, they always fly into Charlotte. So Charlotte's about 2 hours away from Asheville, for those who don't know. So me and Tim have been getting to know each other very, very well in a quick period of time from these consistent trips, like me going to pick him up in Charlotte, me taking him back to go back home to Austin. Because what town is it that you live outside of? Wimberley? Yeah, Wimberley. It's just like maybe an hour outside of Austin, something like that.
45 minutes.
45 minutes. Perfect. And we've just been able to dive in really, really deeply, and I feel really, really blessed to have had those times with you, man.
Yeah.
That's actually where he started to share his story with me, and part of why I wanted to bring him on here today is to hear more about that.
It's just been every aspect of this has been so divine to me, and of course just taking the step and investing into the equipment, and just making the decision to go all in, really, and to help people, to serve people in need, specifically in disaster zones. And so obviously as we go through the interview, and I'll share more, but that was this particular piece that you're referring to, of us connecting because of these flights that only come in and out of Charlotte, because it's the closest airport to where we are that Southwest flies in and out of, and our trips to and from the airports, and the conversations, as you said, I would have never expected that to be a part of what's going on out here, but obviously is such a vital part of it. And so yeah, I'm excited just to be able to do this again, this interview, and be able to share the story with you, and with you out there as well. So,
and it feels like every one of our conversations has been an interview, honestly.
Yes.
Like this is one of the reasons why I wanted to just sit down with you here, because it's like every single time that Tim and I have been talking, it's just felt like we should have had something recording
Yes.
to just take
Yeah.
note of all of this. And it's like, we need to start
Yes.
doing something with this.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I wanted to do it for like relief efforts and everything like that too,
Mhm.
and be able to get this guy the funding that he needed and everything.
Yeah.
But also too, I just like talking with him.
Yeah.
So I mean, on that note too,
Yeah.
like can you just kind of take us from the top here, just in this situation after the hurricane had actually hit and everything? Like,
Mhm.
how did you specifically get called into this area? And you can start as far back as you want when it comes to like pertinent information.
Okay. Yeah. So before the hurricane hit, I had invested in two pieces of equipment, heavy machinery, financed them zero down because I don't have any money at the time saved up. I still don't.
Was that for another project? I forget.
So the equipment
Yeah.
was for it was for disaster relief.
So you were already doing disaster relief.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I see
So
that was actually the part that I couldn't remember from our previous conversations.
Just not at this level. I would call it this level.
Yeah.
In the past, it's always been, maybe one a year, two a year, if that. Just depends on, the natural disasters that occurred that I had, the ability to go be involved in, and my schedule.
Yeah.
My work schedule changed this year because I closed down the equipment rental business that I was running last year, and started a new job in February of this year. And that job has allowed me, along with my current position at the ranch where I live and work also, both of those positions just have allowed me some flexibility to be able to do some of this type of volunteer work. And so after Hurricane Beryl hit Southeast Texas late June of this year, early July, I had been in Southeast Texas for about 9 days with a machine that I borrowed, a trailer that I borrowed from both friends of mine, and I'd just been down there doing cleanup work, tree removal, debris removal, trees off of houses, driveways, properties, etc., with the equipment. Once I got back home from that trip, it was shortly after that I just sensed that, I was like, God, you put me in a position to be able to have that little more time to do this kind of work, volunteer work, and to help people in need. And you've given me a heart to do that. And I knew he had, because it's something that I've done. I've just had a desire to do, and I've done it when I've been able to over the years. And so I was just like, you know what? I want to give you everything that I have. In the past, it's been, I'll give you a little bit of this, or I'll give you a little bit of that. I'll give you my time, but like right now, I was just like, God, I just want to give you everything. I want to give you all the money that I have access to, all the assets that I have access to, everything that's in my possession that I believe you've given to me. I want to use that for you and your kingdom here on earth by specifically serving people in need, or just helping people. And so so on a local level, I've been able to do that specifically with our local fire and rescue department. I'm connected with both of our fire chief and assistant chief, as well as some of the firefighters and first responders there in that community. And so when I have, again, the ability and time and in position to serve them and to assist them, then I do. And that can be,
I didn't even know you were doing that.
That could be with, something as small as a water trailer that I've had access to over the years, and so it's a water trailer that can hold several hundred to 1,000 gallons of water, and it's got a pump on it. And so if it helps them, to transport water from, let's say like a tender truck or a tanker truck, a big truck that carries, a couple thousand gallons of water maybe, that can really only be staged on the highway or a parking area. They're limited on their access in like a wildland fire scenario. So if it's to transfer water from like that unit to what we would call like a brush truck, um, then then that cuts down their time of having to, once that brush truck runs out of water, having to travel all the way out to that tanker truck or tinder truck, whatever they call it, and then go back and start fighting again. And so, or if it's just maybe it's being in a position to be out identifying or locating, spotting, access to a fire that maybe I've seen or somebody's contacted me about before any, fire resources have actually arrived to the scene. And so if I happen to be in an area that I'm, closer to it, I can get there quicker than, just being able to relay information to them so that it cuts down on the response time, and then gives them quicker access.
Have you been have you been dealing with some like
wildland
brush
fires,
fires and
yes.
stuff like that
So
out here?
yes,
Even with that's kind of ironic since the flood, since the major flood that brought you out here, you're still like you've been doing stuff with like brush fires and
yeah. So that's not since this storm hit, but in the past.
In the past,
I would
gotcha.
say in the past 2 years, we back home, in Wimberley, we've had two substantial wildland fires that I've been involved in. Obviously, more than that, because it's just a high risk area for wildland fires there in Central Texas. But two that I've been involved in because they directly affected the property that I live on and the people's lives and animals that we have there. Yeah. And so, to be able to assist them as well. And so that's one thing that I do on a local level, as well as, if there's tornadoes that hit in the area or hurricanes, and typically obviously coming into the coast in Southeast Texas, that those are, opportunities, I guess, that I've had in the past just to go and serve. And so I just went out. I was like, okay, I'm going to give you everything I have. And what I had the most of really at that time after Hurricane Beryl was a truck, some small hand tools like chainsaw and consumables for the saw, and faith and excellent credit. And a little bit of cash saved up at that point in time. But what I was in the process of doing was using a large portion of that cash to, put as down payments on the first few machines or assets really that I was financing. And the first two were a water trailer and a haul trailer. So an equipment haul trailer specifically that could handle the amount of weight that the largest machine that I purchased weighs. And so, which the whole water trailer buying experience ended up being just a very unpleasant experience for me, and turned out, and I can go into more detail later on, but it turned out that it was such a bad experience that they actually built the wrong trailer from the factory.
I remember you telling me about that whole story.
And then they delivered it to me, and when I saw it, I was like, this is not the right trailer. It's not even what's on the build sheet. That was created when I made the initial call to order the trailer. And so they came back and picked it up, and it was a mess, and I was frustrated about the whole thing because it took 2 to 2.5 months longer than it was supposed to build, and then they sent the wrong trailer, or they built it incorrectly, and so they just decided to for everybody that was involved, just for all of us to part ways and for me to go deal with someone else. And so so they ended up sending me the down payment back to me, which was just over $6,000, which came into play at just the right time because I actually needed that. It was a little more than $6,000 to get this other haul trailer that I borrowed, repaired and out of the wrecking yard in Houston. And so I'll go into that part of the story as well. So, but So that's what I had, and I had faith, credit, and a truck, and some time, and um, so because I work at a plant nursery in Wimberley. So we sell landscaping plants, trees, shrubs, and then on the inside of the business structure there at the business is um, interior decor. And so we sell that inside, and then we have pottery as well. And so my role is more so on the outside, the plant part of it, and tree sales. But so our busiest time of the year is springtime, obviously, and the remainder of the year is somewhat slow, and so it gives me some freedom and flexibility to do some of this outside volunteer work when I can. So, so I just was like, okay, here's what I've got.
Yeah.
I used the cash that I had for those first two assets as down payments. So then I was down to very little in the bank account. And I had already, my next two pieces of equipment were going to be financed zero down. And I felt like I would get approved because I had really good credit. And so I ordered the skid steer first, got approved for it, and then I ordered the excavator. After that, zero down. And so,
it's incredible because Tim, you had told me when you were first telling me the story, it was you were telling me about like the likelihood of someone in your situation actually even getting approved for any of this stuff, especially when you started to get next piece of equipment, next piece of equipment, next piece of equipment, and you just kept faith. You kept faith in God, and just kept saying, all right, you know what, if this is supposed to happen, like I'm going to trust that we're going to find a way to make this happen. And then it just kept happening. You kept finding more and more ways to be able to get the equipment that you needed to continue to serve.
And that ties, that's a great point, Ethan, because that ties into my experience, and I've experienced this before, but I'm just going to use the Hurricane Burl time in the field helping with cleanup there in Southeast Texas. Is that's what I had. I had the truck that I make payments on, and then I had a borrowed skid steer from a friend of mine who uses it for his livelihood. I mean, that's how he puts food on his table for him and his wife and kids, and it's the only machine that he has. It's a brand new machine, but he didn't need it at that time, that week, and he just said, man, take it. If you can use it, be a blessing to other people, and take it. I don't need it this week, and so, but how it is in construction, you never know when you might need, you may or may not need a machine. All of a sudden you need a machine, but he was willing to release it to me, and then the same with the trailer. Very good friend of mine who actually I grew up with. He's more like a brother to me than a friend, and because we actually grew up together. Our parents were our best friends, and still are best friends. And they had 4 kids, and my parents had 4 kids, and we were all at the same ages, and so very close with this friend of mine. And he just built this trailer, brand new, heavy duty equipment haul trailer. Got it at the end of last year, and didn't need it that week, and said, take it if you can use it and be a blessing. Take it and use it. And so that's what I went with, and I was like, okay, God, this is what I have access to, so this is what I'm taking. But I know once I get there, I'm going to need a place to stay. I'm going to need food. I'm going to need money for fuel, for the equipment, the chainsaws, and everything. I mean, the consumables. I'm going to need some place to wash clothes. I'm going to need a lot of things, that I really don't have the income for, and so, but it was just a matter of that, taking that step. And he's like, I just need you to take what you have and show up. And I'll do the rest. For as long as you're there, I'll do the rest. And that's exactly what I experienced on that trip. Was I showed up with what I had, and then each day and as the week went on, there were so many provisions that came in. I had more than what I needed, actually. And everything came at just the right time. Some friends of mine from Wimberley actually came midweek with another machine of theirs, They were there for 2 days,
Yeah.
and we were working together for 2 days that they were there, and then they left and went back because they both run businesses,
Yeah.
and that was as much time as they could give. But it was like perfect timing. Like I needed them, like those 2 days exactly during the week is when like I needed them the
Yeah.
most was when they should. It wasn't like we planned that. That's just when they said this is the 2 days. They were like, this is the 2 days that we're available and we can go.
Yeah.
And so that's just one example. But the connecting with the nonprofit there in the community where I ended up, that's a whole nother story too of just a God story of that I ended up in this particular community that was well underserved after that hurricane hit. I was headed to the county just to the east of it, because that's where all the large organizations were set up, and running distributions and cleanup crews,
Yeah.
because that county got hit the
Which
hardest.
county was this?
That was Cali. I can't think of the name of the county, but it's where Lake Jackson is, Lake
Okay.
Jackson, Texas.
Okay. See, and this is what's I wanted to confirm that really quick, because just for anybody who's not clear about it, Tim's still talking about a hurricane that he helped clean up for in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is what's really really incredible about what you've been doing is that you've been doing these relief efforts
Mm-hmm.
for a long period of time. We're just another long string of people
Mm-hmm.
that have benefited from your giving nature, from your level of service that you step into.
Yeah.
It's dude,
Yeah.
like it's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted
Well,
to like
thank you.
clarify
Clarifying
that
that.
for
Yeah.
anybody who wasn't catching that.
Yeah.
Like we're still just talking about another hurricane.
hurricane.
Yeah, he hasn't even gotten to Hurricane
Right.
Helene yet.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was on my way to
Yeah.
that county, and I was in contact because, as you just mentioned, I've been able to do hurricane relief work in the past. I've made connections with some of the bigger organizations like Samaritan's Purse here in North Carolina,
Yeah.
or Southeast Texas Disaster Relief, and others. And so just using that network from previous times of connection and serving in disaster zones, I found out that okay, they were like, this is where we are, this is where we're located, and we've got one of our command centers and distribution sites set up in this county, and yes, we really need the type of equipment that you have and operators like yourself. And so if you're coming and you're looking for a place to land and serve, we need what you have to offer. We can keep you busy. And so that's where I was actually heading, because that's all. I mean, that's just I knew there were people on the ground there, and I knew that as soon as I hit the ground, I wouldn't have to go out and look for things to do. I would be able just to fall right in with them and serve with them, and they provide lodging, they provide food, showers. They're just extremely well run organizations, and so that's where I was headed. And then all of a sudden, like the night before I left Wimberley to go over there, my aunt and uncle, one of my aunt and uncles who lives in this county, it's Wharton County where I ended up, they connected me with a lady who set up and runs a nonprofit organization in their community in Wharton. Yeah, I knew nothing about this organization, knew nothing about this woman, nothing. They just said she would probably be a good source to help me identify needs specific for the equipment that I had. And so I was like, great, I'll reach out to her, and if she's got people that she knows about that need help with the equipment, then I'll stop there for however long. If it's a day, it's a day. If it's 2 days, 2 days, and I'll help there, and then I'll move on to the next county, and partner up with Samaritan's Purse or Southeast Texas Disaster Relief. And so because they were both there, and so in that Lake Jackson area. And so anyways, I ended up connecting with that lady. The next morning, I actually ended up staying with my aunt and uncle that night because I got in late that night. Met with that lady the next morning, and she was like, "I've got a list
Mm-hmm.
of needs,
Yeah.
and I've got the address, I've got phone numbers. So if y'all just want to go down the list." Her husband was there that day volunteering as well, so he would go out in front of me since I had all the equipment, and he would just go ahead and identify, places that were like, yes, this particular need going to require that equipment,
Mm-hmm.
or no, this one can be done by hand and a chainsaw. We've got other teams that can do that. And so it was just very, very helpful. But we didn't actually really get our first major tree removal project until the end of that first day.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, we'll knock this out in several hours, and then I'll head on over and partner up with Samaritan's Purse, and the following day. But again, it was just one of those things where it was like, okay, there's a major need here.
Mm-hmm.
This huge, huge pecan tree in Southeast Texas. They're massive. You've ever seen them. They're huge.
Actually, where I grew up in Northeast Kansas.
Has
I grew up for the first 10 years of my life right by a wildlife refuge that had pecan trees everywhere.
So
I know exactly
the size.
they're
Yes,
huge. Yeah,
they're massive.
Yeah.
So this one actually had split. It V'd off,
Mm-hmm.
quarter of the way up the trunk of the tree, V'd off, and then one side of it split, broke off. The other was still standing. This one fell on the house, went through the roof. It was
hardwood too.
It's
heavy,
and it's so heavy, and it was it was probably bigger than any tree in Central Texas where I live, because there's not that many big trees there, and yet it was just part of the tree. It wasn't even the entire tree.
Yeah.
Crushed the roof, brought the power line down on it as well. So and the linemen are incredible, what they can do in a short amount of time, and that's just what they do in any kind of weather condition.
We definitely saw it up here.
Yeah, they're such a blessing and a gift to us. And so when we showed up to that house, they were just finishing connecting the line, and they were about to charge the line. And so we didn't have to wait. We were 5 minutes. We just waited for them to charge the line, and then they were packed up out of there, and we had access to start processing. Working on getting that tree off the house. But it was extremely risky, because actually the new line that they connected went right over the top of the tree.
Oh, no.
So the tree was still on the roof, and the new line went right over the tree. So it was a very, very risky situation, using the skid steer to hold it while cutting, certain sections of it with the saw, trying not to, allow it to go any further into the house at the same time, but obviously not hit the line. It was a challenge, very, very high risk, but thankfully was able to remove it safely and get that one cleaned up. But it was just one of those things where it was like, okay, I told them that I would stay in this area as long as there's a need for this equipment.
Yeah.
And so we didn't finish her tree work up until the following morning, because it was so late in the day that day, that when we started hers, that it got dark, and we had to stop for the night.
And once again, this is all volunteer.
All
work.
Volunteer. Yeah.
All volunteer work.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep driving that home, because it's easy to hear about some of this kind of stuff and not really have it be associated with anything special, because we see people working on this kind of stuff all the time. It's like you see linesmen doing their thing, you see people in construction and stuff like that doing their things, you see people taking down trees and everything like that. It's no big deal. Like, they're all getting paid for it. Like, every single bit of the stuff that you're doing is 100% volunteer work. It's all on your dime or from donations.
God has been so good to me in my life. He's rescued me from death in 2011. He's so faithful. Every time I stray, and wander off and come back and turn around, he's right there, or in need or whatever. And so just, his experiencing his goodness, and his faithfulness and peace and all that he is, I can't help but to give that away. That's one reason he does it. Is so that we can experience the reality of, or realities of who he is, and then to share that, not just speak it, but to actually live it out. And so it's just like, it's an honor, it's a privilege, it's a gift to be able to receive it from him, but then also to be able to give it, to share it, to give it away as well. And so, knowing that people have just experienced a devastating event, and I myself have been through not just devastation physically, but emotionally, and so I know what it's like to deal with emotional trauma, and most people do. I mean, I would say a lot of people do.
Yeah.
It's just a part of life here, and so unfortunately, but at the same time, if we allow it to, it can actually lead us closer to Jesus, and really more, gain a better understanding of who he is. I say he's spirit, he's not a person, but and so, yeah, and then just to be like, yeah, I don't want to show up and, take advantage of somebody that's in a disastrous situation, devastation, loss. I want to help. I want to help them get back on their feet. Or just take some of the burden off of their shoulders by just removing debris and brush, from their property with equipment that I've learned how to operate over the years. And I enjoy operating, and so being able to help them kind of find relief from that burden. It's like, so the second woman that we ended up helping after we finished the first lady's removing the tree off of her house that following morning, it was just like, okay, I was just like hearing God say, I just want you to love the person in front of you and to serve the next person in front of you. And when you run out of those people, then you can move on to the next county, But as long as there's a next person, stay right where you are and continue to serve right there. And I was there for 9 days. I never left that community. I never made it to the county next door.
Yeah.
Because that place where I was exactly where I was supposed to be, that community. I ended up in a subdivision, one specific subdivision, about a mile from the Colorado River runs through that little town of Wharton, Texas, and there's a subdivision, more than one, but one specific subdivision about a mile on, I would call it the south side of the river. And there's cornfields all around the subdivision. But where the subdivision is, it's heavily wooded, dense trees. Like you can't even see the cornfields around the subdivision because of the density of the trees. Yeah. And when I got in there, so it looked like a bomb had gone off in there. Kind of like what we, what you would see here with the tornadic winds that were going on at the same time as the flood with Hurricane Helene right here. And so trees snapped in half, trees uprooted. And so we ended up connecting with this woman first in this subdivision because, again, the guy who was going out ahead of me and identifying, needs specific for the equipment, he came across this woman as he was going to check another neighbor of hers who was on the list. She wasn't even on our list. Yeah. He just went to go check somebody else on the list, found out that they didn't even need the equipment help. What they needed was more, chainsaw work. And he passed by her on the way out. And so he stopped and got out and talked to her. She's out there. She had like 13 huge, they weren't pecans, they were elm trees, which are slender and extremely tall, uprooted. Like 13 of them on her property. She's only got like 2 acres at the most, if that. And one of them is on the house, fell on the house and punctured the roof in, like, I counted 20 to 25 holes in the roof. Yes. Well, you couldn't even get to that tree that was on the house until you cleared all the other 12 trees there was no way to get the machine back there unless she cleared all the other trees. And so she's out there with a battery powered sawzall trying to cut up a. She had one large pecan tree in the front of the house that came down.
A sawzall, not a chainsaw.
Sawzall, because that's all she had and that's all she knew how to operate. Her husband had passed away, I think 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. Here she is now on her own. This massive storm that just hit, trees everywhere, one on the house, roof is leaking water, and that's all she's got that she knows how to use. And so she's out there trying to do what she can. She doesn't have the money. As you mentioned, another contractor had already shown up and said, we can do this work, but I don't remember what price they gave her, but obviously it's a lot of money to clear that amount of timber. And so anyway, she couldn't afford it. So she was doing the best she could. And so Stan is the guy's name that was kind of going out in front of me and identifying properties and needs. He called me because I was just finishing up the first project, and he said, oh, I've got one I want you to see. I've got pictures of it. I want you to see them. So we met at this, where the organization that I ended up collaborating with in town. Their facilities are in town, right on the river. We met there for lunch, and that was another thing. They provided all of my meals for me during the day. At night, my aunt and uncle provided meals for me. They washed my clothes. So I mean, all those kind of needs were met. Yeah. Like I didn't know. I didn't call and ask them if they would do that. That's just what they did, and it was such a blessing. I had a warm place to sleep, and a cool place to sleep. It was actually hot. It was middle of summer that time. Clothes were washed, food, home cooked meals, and so we met for lunch. He showed me the pictures. I said, yeah, we can do this. So we show up, and I meet the lady, and I said, we can help you. And she was like, just obviously, just incredibly, grateful. And, she hadn't dealt with equipment of that size before, so she didn't know how, quickly that work could be done.
Yeah.
And, we had it all cleaned up in less than 24 hours of actual work time. It took 2 days.
Yeah.
But as far as work time goes, less than 24 hours. All the trees cut up, stacked, tree off the house, roof tarp, and on to the next. Well, while we're working on hers, her neighbors see us.
Yeah.
They connect with her and say, hey, who are those people? What are they doing? She tells them they're just out here at the Gusnet, doing volunteer work.
Yeah. That's the thing. In those disaster scenarios like that, no person, like, I liked how you said you just stayed in the community as long as work.
There was a need.
As long as there was a need. As long as there was work to be done, you just stay in the community there. Because you're not going to, especially when you're confronted with, like, not only seeing the person's situation, but then also, like, seeing them, talking to them, connecting with the human being there. You're not about to go leave to do another project in another area.
Right.
Like this person's need is just as great.
Yeah.
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 Like, there's obvious exceptions. If somebody's lost a house versus somebody has a tree like leaning against a house or something like that. Like you gotta.
Right.
What takes precedence? But I mean, it's such a great example of just like bloom where you're planted. Just stay right there and just like focus and do the work.
Right.